Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today's video is all about harvesting potatoes and garlic. I'm just going to show you the harvest, but really planting in another round of potatoes. I'm going to use red Pontiacs, Yukon Gold from the grocery store. Now, in the heat of the summer, I'm in Maryland. They may not get as large, but you're going to get a lot of smaller potatoes. It works. I've done it for several years, and I'm going to plant again later in the summer so that they grow through the cool season. It's the heat that's going to make them kind of grow quickly. Sometimes they don't do as well, but you still end up getting potatoes. And the point is that you can continue to plant potatoes several times over the season depending on where your garden is. Going to clean up this area. There's some hardneck garlic in there. Just want to show you real quick the before. Onions, going to be a subject of another video right there. Going to harvest the containers. Those potatoes are ready. When they start looking something like that, you can really start harvesting your potatoes. If you leave them in past, when they kind of yellow, flop over and fall, they're going to start regrowing again, and they die off, and then the potatoes themselves will send up new, growth, new, basically green sprouts. So we're going to clean up everything right here. This is all potatoes right in there. All potatoes back there. I'll show you the harvest, and then we'll get to planting the summer crop of red Pontiacs and Yukon Golds. Now this bed did get shaded out by the nectarine tree, and it was okay. Potatoes, French fingerlings, some red Pontiacs in there. Those might be German butterballs. Garlic came out. Some more hardneck garlic right in here. I'm going to just sit out here for 2 days, although it's starting to thunderstorm, whatever. We're not supposed to get rain, so hopefully it's just thunder and no storm is rolling in. I want these to dry a little bit. You're supposed to cure potatoes for up to 2 weeks at about 45 degrees to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's kind of hard to do here in the Maryland summers. So I do have a cellar. They can go in there for a little bit, but you can also eat them pretty fast. These are going to get turned into mashed potatoes. I'm going to be freezing them. I'm actually buying a freezer to really store a lot of the produce this year, and I'm going to store potatoes as mashed potatoes, and I can just heat that up whenever I want, over the season and into the winter. These are red Pontiacs. They were planted in the bottom level, on the top level. Okay production. They did run into some trouble with me keeping up with the watering, and that's the key. I'm going to be fertilizing and setting up these beds. Take a look at what came out of here. I'm going to be using potassium and phosphorus to improve the beds here. Not organic. You can use organic if you want. Chemical fertilizers won't harm your plant. They're not going to destroy your soil. Also good to get organic fertilizer put in there. Also good to get compost put in there. It's not really about the fertilizers for potatoes. The main key is watering. When they get growing, you want to keep up with the watering, and you may have to do it every day, like in these containers, which I messed up, and that's why the production wasn't as good as I wanted. Maybe every other day in the ground, and maybe even daily when the greenery is really tall and it's still, producing growth, looks good, and the potatoes are still forming. When the temperatures are getting up into the 80s and the sun is baking down there, these plants really take in the water. So you have to keep the moisture really there, or your potatoes are going to suffer. You're going to see the greenery fall over. When that falls over, they don't have moisture. They're going to be taking it from the potato. So the key, regular watering more often than you think. That's more important, in my opinion, than the fertilizers that you're using down here. So those were red Pontiacs. Pretty good. This was pretty nice because I only put in 4 to 6 potatoes, and these are Huckleberry Gold. These were from a bagged potato that I bought at Tractor Supply, I think, and they're absolutely beautiful. I'm going to be using some of these potatoes to grow again in July. Now, if you have time, meaning 90 days from when you put in the potatoes before a frost comes, you can grow them again. Red Norlands, red Pontiacs, Kennebecks, they mature somewhere from once they start growing the greenery 70 to 90 days. So I know that I'm going to be able to get more potatoes out of here. I mean, the harvest right in this little space was really, really good. So the little potatoes I'll be, letting cure out here for 2 days. Then I'm going to put them in my cellar for about another week, and I'll be eating those pretty regularly. The bigger potatoes, like I said, they're going to be mashed potatoes. I'm going to freeze some of them. I'm going to make potato soup. I'll freeze some of that. These are the red Pontiacs. Maybe the red New Orleans, to be honest with you. I can't remember which one in the, well, let's see if this one stayed. Yeah, so these are the red New Orleans, good. The other ones are red Pontiacs. Not as much as I thought I was going to get out of the space, but still pretty good. Kennebecs, really nice. I mean, those are going to be baked potatoes. You can eat potatoes freshly pulled out of the ground, no worries. You want to cure them for that 2-week period so that the skins toughen up, any wounds scab over, and then they just store better. So it's really up to you whether or not you want to do that. And then these are Yukon Golds, a little bit bigger. Same issue in here, that I let the moisture fail, get too low basically, and they did suffer a little bit. So again, moisture is the key. All right, so I'm going to clean these up, and then I'm going to put down the fertilizers, and I'll show you how I do that. But overall, I am really happy with the production out of here, and I'm going to be setting up the soil the same exact way I did in the spring to get this type of production. I'm going to prep this part of the bed. I'm going to do the same thing in the rest of the bed, but for the video I'm just going to work right in here. I'll show you the fertilizer in a second. I'm going to use some of the smaller potatoes right in the front there to replant. You can do that. You don't have to chit your potatoes, C-H-I-T. In the spring we like to do that. Let the potatoes start to warm up, grow some greenery, get them into the soil, and that's great for the spring because the soil is colder, you get a jump to get going. But in this warm soil, warm temperature, they're going to start growing very quickly. And in fact, if you leave your potatoes in too long and don't harvest them, they're going to just reroot, they're going to start growing more greenery, they're going to send up stalks, and everything will start over again. So in this space, some compost, if you have it, put it down, it's great stuff. I will be mixing that into there with a hand shovel. I'll show you, and along with all this fertilizer. This is just a basic organic fertilizer. This is plant tone, and I heavily handed sprinkle it in. I'm just going to show you, like a nice big handful right across here. Potatoes are heavy feeders. They do enjoy more potassium than most plants, but I'm going to be giving them extra potassium, some extra phosphorus too. So this is my basic setup. And if you want to stop here, just any organic fertilizer, I buy what's on sale. They're all basically the same. Some compost, work it in, it's going to be fine. I do like to add in some potassium. Now this is a 0,060 potassium. This is made by people, commonly known as chemical type. Not going to hurt you, not going to hurt your plants, and I just scatter it across there. If you want to use an organic alternative, that's perfectly fine, but I do recommend putting in some extra potassium. And then I use triple phosphate, which is a 0,450. And again, you can use an organic alternative, or you can skip that. I just don't want people to fear chemical fertilizers. This is not going to wreck your soil. It's not going to kill your soil life. Your potatoes will love you for it, and just something like that. Because this is really high in P and K, potassium and phosphorus, don't heavily put it down, just sprinkle it across, and we're going to work all this right into the soil. Right now I could use my hand, but got to grab a shovel, and I'm just going to mix it in. I'll be looking for extra potatoes. There's a little one. But get this worked into a good 4 to 6 inches of the soil, and then we'll come back and we'll plant. And that's all you have to do for potatoes in July. And I use this setup essentially in the spring, and you know, you can see the production that I got out of this space. So remember, these are the red Pontiacs that came out of this space. So I am putting in 18 potatoes. This is what I put in last time. So 18 potatoes, about this size, yielded everything that you see here. And when I turn the soil, good 6 inches, nice and loose, I found even more potatoes. So these are ready to go in. Now I'm going to push these in about 4 inches deep. Fertilizers mixed through. Spacing can be 4 to 6 inches, however you want to do it. Now, because we're in the summer and these were just put in, so to speak, you don't need to water them right away. You can just kind of let them sit in there, and when you start seeing the green growth, that's when you want to start watering regularly. Potatoes are going to get as tall as my peppers over there. When they're that tall, that's when you might be needing to water every day, every other day. So in the beginning, it's less water. They're just getting established. So put them into the earth. I have rain coming in a couple of days. I'm gonna let the rain take care of it. You could water them in once and then just let it go. You know, don't worry about it. You don't need to keep this wet or anything like that. The potatoes will do their own thing. When they start to grow, then you can start watering more often. And when they're just kind of breaking the surface, you know, 2 or 3 times a week or something like that. So these are going down, just digging down about 4 inches, dropping the potato in, covering it over, and I will do that for all of them, and we'll wrap up with a couple more tips on growing potatoes. So I'm going to prepare the rest of the beds tomorrow. It's been a long day. Same exact way. I like to create a mound so that in the spring especially it drains well. I don't want my potatoes sitting in really damp, soggy soil, especially in the spring when it's cold. They're more susceptible to rotting. Just wanted to cut in and clarify the difference between determinate type potatoes and indeterminate type potatoes. So a determinate potato, you set it into the ground like I'm doing, 4 inches, 6 inches deep. You let it grow, you let it do its thing. It's predominantly going to produce potatoes around the root system, the initial root system, and no more. And the red Pontiacs, as far as I know, it's very confusing trying to identify which potatoes are determinates or indeterminates. But the red Pontiacs, the red Norlands, the Yukon Gold are determinate varieties, and the Kennebecs. So I just plant them 4 inches deep. I let them do their thing. Indeterminate type of potatoes, you could, and you probably heard about mounding around the growth, around the stalk. So if they were indeterminate variety, you put them in 4 inches deep. They grow greenery 6 inches. You hill around that. You bring in more soil, and they produce more potatoes out of that growth, out of the stem where you've buried it over. I don't really do that. It's a lot of extra work. I kind of like these potatoes. The production is good. So as far as I understand, again, and I've spent a long time trying to, figure out which potatoes are what. However, I grow them as determinate variety, 4 inches deep, let them grow, no extra work, and the production is really, really good. Just to clarify, early on, we're not going to really water a whole lot. Water them in once if you want, let the rain do it. It's not until that green growth comes up that you're going to start worrying about watering. I'm also not going to use any water-soluble fertilizer right now. I'm going to wait until I see that green growth coming up again, and I will water everything in with a water-soluble fertilizer. I use AgroThrive. You can check them out in the video description. I am affiliated with them and highly recommend it. It's an organic fertilizer. Does a really, really good job taking care of your plants. This is all I do for July planted potatoes. Again, they may not be as large as the ones that you see here that are planted in the spring. If you're in a place where you really don't get a frost and the temperatures cool down, you can wait a little bit, get through the heat of July, get your 90 days of growth, and the potatoes tend to do better, when the temperatures are cooler. But this works really, really well for setting them up and growing in the spring, in July, later August, if you have the right, climate. You can grow potatoes in several waves over an entire season. They're just not a crop that you have to plant in the spring. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and give potatoes a try. If you don't want to do the earth beds, you can grow them certainly in fabric pots. I sell those at my seed shop too if you want to check them out. The setup would be essentially the same. I'm just putting the organic matter on there, same amount of fertilizers like you saw me do here, work it in really into the top 6 inches of the fabric pots. You're good to go. You're going to have to water fabric pots more often, versus earth planted potatoes. Thanks for watching.